Hello, friends, and welcome once again to Worldview on Dialogues. I'm your host, Vishal Dahiya, and this week we're going to talk about the much discussed topic in the international media, both in India and in the Western media and all across the world as well. That is the question of two-state solution in the Israel-Palestine conflict. In fact, the renewed focus on this comes on because of the Israel-Palestine, of course, a discussion which has been going on for quite a long time, but also because of the fact that the two-state solution has been discussed threadbare at United Nations this week, and several countries have recognized the state of Palestine and expressed their support for the two-state solution. Now, if we go back a little back in the history, we'll figure out that in 1948, the state of Israel was formed. And in a very short period of time, it was recognized by the Western countries and several other nations across the globe. And in 1949, it also became the member of United Nations. Whereas in 1988, that is around 40 years later, when the PLO declared a state of Palestine, it was recognized by several global South nations. But as far as the Western powers are concerned, they refused to recognize the state of Palestine, saying there needs to be a detailed discussion on the two-state solution. And since then, the discussion has been going on for a long period. But now there seems to be a turn which has happened in this entire situation. And the turn is very interesting. Countries like France, Canada, Australia, and several other have expressed their support for the state of Palestine and for a two-state solution. So why has that happened? 1, 2, is two-state solution possible? And 3, is two-state solution the solution of the ongoing conflict in the West Asia, specifically Israel versus Palestine or Israel versus Hamas out there? For more on this, we're joined by two distinguished experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us former Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He is also a research fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation. Welcome, Ambassador Trigunayat, to the show. We're also joined by Professor A.K. Pasha. He is a former director of the Center for West Asian Studies at SIS JNU. Professor Pasha, welcome to you as well, sir. I'll begin with you, Mr. Trigunayat, and of course, I would want both of you to elaborate more on this question. But let's first understand the historical context as well. What is it that we mean when we talk about the two-state solution?
Well, as you know, that this is really depends on to what extent you want to go. But at least for 100 odd years since the Balfour Declaration that was signed by Lord Balfour, and in a letter which is just, I believe, at the 67 word letter, in which the fate of Israel was decided, that the state of Israel will be created, and that letter was written to the Zionist leaders of the time. And there, I mean, this all after the Ottoman Empire was defeated. But then subsequently, 1923 onwards, the British continued to have the mandate over it. In 1948, after the United Nations was born in 1945, this was one of the first resolutions that was passed in which state of Israel was created, and there was a state of Palestine supposed to be. Now, it was basically, if you leave aside those historic, very, very highly historic, long going back thousands of years history, then it's a very different situation. But if you were to simply see that Israel was given 55% of the total land which belonged to Palestine earlier, and 45% was for the new Palestinian state. So obviously they felt aggrieved, the Arab countries and the Palestinians, and then they went to war. And since then, we have seen several wars have taken place. However, the war of 1967 between Israel and the Arab states was the most decisive one, in which Israel was able to capture a lot of West Bank and the territories, including Gaza and others, Golan Heights and in the area. So it was a very decisive victory for the Israelis going forward. It has been supported all along by the Western countries. However, as you mentioned, that in 1988, when the Palestinian state was first recognized, India was one of the first, or probably the only non-Arab country to have recognized the state of Palestine. And we have also provided land and built an embassy and provided all the assistance to them throughout. A two-state solution, India believes, is the only fair solution whereby both states can live side by side, should be obtained through dialogue. There were there is a quartet that was formed with the big all superpowers, and but they failed completely. And there have been several other agreements since then, whether it was Madrid summit or whether it's Oslo Accords or whatever. But the fact remains is that Palestinians never got their land, or their legitimate aspirations have been met. And
Mhm.
consequently, we have seen that the Palestinians have taken the path of resistance, and the Hamas, which was created again in around 1987 88 in Gaza, basically fighting for their own survival, and they do not recognize the state of Israel, although the Palestinian Authority, after the Oslo Accords, recognized the state of Israel. So we are
Okay.
seeing now for the last 2.5 years, since October 7, 2 years nearly, that the war has been going on between Israel and Hamas. Israel wants to destroy Hamas completely, and in that process has nearly decimated about 65,000 people have been killed, a lot of them from women and children also. And there have been, starvation is being used as some kind of a weapon against the hapless Gazans. And now
Okay.
the displacement of Gazans is going on. So we are facing a very big problem. Within this background, the European countries have risen, especially led by France and all the Nordic countries, Portugal, and several other Italy and
Indeed, indeed. We'll come to that part as well, Mr. Trigunayat, as to why there is this turn taken by several European countries, as you are mentioning, led by France out there. But let's bring in Professor Pasha also and listen in to his views. Professor Pasha, on the issue of two-state solution, as I was asking Mr. Trigunayat as well. What do we understand in terms of the two-state solution in a historic context? And Mr. Trigunayat spoke about last 100 odd years or so, and all of us have, either read the history of last 100 years or watched some of it as well happening in front of our eyes, or we've read it on the newspapers or websites as well. But from a historic context as well, is two-state solution a feasible way forward?
Yes, the short answer is yes. But from a historical backdrop, you see, when the Balfour Declaration was issued in 1917, the Jews formed a very tiny minority. But the mandate which was given to Britain over Palestine, this was used by the British to flood Palestine with refugees, Jewish refugees from Europe and other places, and the atrocities in Germany accelerated this exodus. So by 1945 or 47, when the UN General Assembly took up this issue, you see the demographic ratio had completely changed, not only because of the new wave of refugees who came from Europe, but also the wealthy Jews bought up huge tracts of land, villages, entire villages, townships, etc. So, when the UN General Assembly took up the matter and decided to partition Palestine in November 1947 through the UN Resolution 181, so they gave a major part, that is 55% to the Jews and 45% to the Palestinians, with the international city status for Jerusalem. And obviously, the Arabs were unhappy, and the war took place. But Israel, over and above, expanded beyond the 55%. And since then, under David Ben Gurion, first prime minister, and subsequent leaders, Israel has kept its border open. Although it doesn't have a written constitution, it only has basic law. But Israel is the only country which has not defined its borders as per the UN requirement for its membership. That was one of the reasons why India was reluctant to support Israel's membership in the UN. And finally, in September 1950, Prime Minister Nehru relented due to international pressure, so on, etc.
Okay.
So When the wars took place in 56, 67, as Ambassador Anil pointed out, and since 67, they have grabbed more and more West Bank and East Jerusalem territories with settlements, Israeli settlements, Jewish settlements, etc. And they did it in Gaza also. But Sadat visited Jerusalem in November 77 and signed the Camp David Accords in September 78 and March 79, the bilateral peace treaty, under which all these Jewish settlements were evicted. So there is a precedent that whatever territory Israel occupied, number one, has been returned in exchange for peace. Entire Sinai was handed over to Egypt, although some parts are demilitarized. There are restrictions to what Egypt can send its military forces. Secondly, each and every settlement, each and every Jew who had settled in Sinai had to go, had to leave, had to dismantle synagogues, etc. So in that way, there is already a precedent. Although the idea of West Bank is very dear to the Jews as part of Eretz Israel, they call it Judah Samaria, and is Jerusalem as their eternal capital. So if there is recognition of Israel durable peace agreements, and if what they said demilitarized zone. So that was the initial expectation of the Israelis. But now,
Okay.
under the present dispensation, it is completely greater Israel, and not only they want to grab West Bank and Gaza and completely East Jerusalem, of course, but go beyond into Syrian territory, Lebanese, Egyptian, and other territories. So it is becoming more and more difficult for the ground reality to be changed
Okay.
because of American support and the Greater Israel Project.
Okay, okay. Ambassador Trigunayat, taking that forward, where Professor Pasha left, there's been a cycle of violence you were also earlier referring to, both in terms of wars and terror attacks as well, hostage situations in the past 75 odd years when we look at this entire area. Uh, and there are several issues which are a major bone of contention. West Bank being one, Jerusalem being the capital, both sides laying claim. And of course, right now it is the question of hostages also with Hamas, and then the kind of armed forces usage which has been done by Israel and in Gaza as well against the civilians also. That is also being questioned right now. Now, my question is that there seems to be a number of roadblocks when we talk about two-state solution, and every time there is a renewed discussion on this issue or dialogue with a renewed vigor, the number of roadblocks or hurdles keep on increasing. So that makes it really difficult.
Yes, you are right. I mean, and the reason is that the proposals that come forward, the people are not sincere. I mean, this is not a deal. It is a highly emotional issue for the Palestinians as well as for Israelis. And so each one wants to have the maximum possible in this. But today, Palestinians are at a great disadvantage. And over time, we have seen that after the Arab peace plan, Saudis had come up and the all Arab countries had agreed in 2002. It was possible that that is land for peace formula could have applied and it could have achieved some results, and there were very little results achieved thereafter. And Israelis were not willing to concede to a great extent. Only thing they vacated Gaza, as Professor has also mentioned, in 2005 under pressure. And finally, now the proposals, whether it is President Trump's proposal in his first term, which was supposed to be a very beautiful deal, or this time wanting to make turn Gaza into a Riviera. I mean, those are the kind of proposals. They are not going to have any kind of a solution except resistance. But I think that one of the uh, only outcome that for Hamas or for Palestinian cause is of October 7, apart from the terror attacks, which everybody condemns, was that they were able to draw back the Saudi and the Arab countries and be a stakeholder in the Palestinian cause. That is something that was dying down, and this was one of the key objectives, and this has been achieved by Hamas. So today, Saudi Arabia is on the forefront for the two-state solution for this, because Saudi Arabia was almost, if you remember, when we had the G20 summit in Delhi, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, when he was here and when the IMEC deal was signed, it was very clearly mentioned. He said that there could be normalization faster than you expect. And
Hmm.
that triggered a chain reaction, and we have seen what happened thereafter since October 7th. The poor hostages are continuing, poor whatever, whoever is alive, and the 65,000 Gazans have been killed. There has been violence that is going on in West Bank as well. So, and there are possibilities of a wider conflagration in the region. So this is a very, very difficult scenario. This is a welcome change that there has been acceptance by the Western countries, and who have not only done that, they had denied Netanyahu to fly over their airspace when they were going to New York this time for the UNGA. So that has become thing they want to. They have clearly said that we'll arrest if he's coming flying over our territory or coming to this part anywhere. So they will abide by the ICC
Hmm.
arrest warrants against Netanyahu. So I think that problem is that Netanyahu said that there is no Palestinian state. And largely he is also supported by the Israelis in general, who
Hmm.
are also not in favor at this moment to do that. So this 21-point formula that President Trump discussed, plan which he discussed recently with several leaders from the region, is what he is trying to push. But that is also a part thing. If there is no complete ceasefire or permanent ceasefire, we cannot see any progress moving forward.
Okay, okay. Professor Pasha, violence remains the major cause of concern from both sides, be it military action from Israel or be it, terror attacks by Hamas, hostage situations. Some of the hostages are still there. In this context, when we look at the road forward, one, of course, without a stop to violence by both sides, it doesn't seem like there will be much to talk about. That is one. Two is the intent, as Mr. Trigunayat was pointing out, intent of coming out with working solutions. Do you think there is a working solution which is being discussed about right now, or is it just just sort of maneuvering or creating more elbow room diplomatically by other stakeholders?
You see, the proposal from Donald Trump is just to please the Arab Muslim leaders who are increasingly under pressure from their own people because of the genocide and because of the scale of atrocities Israel is committing, and in which everybody sees that without American support, this cannot go on even for a single day. So America is trying to placate or please the OIC members that America is floating a new proposal to solve this issue, and also reassure its allies who are shaken by Israeli attack on Qatar. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar and other Gulf states, they are nervous because of what is sustaining in Gaza. And from Gaza to Lebanon to Yemen to Syria to Iran, now Qatar. You see, the fire is engulfing the entire region, and they are all scared about it, that violence may spread. And people may come out on the street as they came out in support of overthrow of the dictators in Arab Spring about 15 years ago.
Hmm.
So in that way, the public opinion has decisively shifted against not only the rulers but against the United States for its unlimited support to Israel, both militarily, political, diplomatic, financial, everything. As far as violence is concerned, you see, the violence is just virtually one-sided. Maybe a few Hamas militants they come out from the tunnels and attack Israelis and go back, or they are killed.
But around 2 years ago, Professor Pasha, in October, it was a all full-fledged terror attack by Hamas that initiated the entire situation.
Yes, that nobody denies that, but that was enabled by Israel. You see, if you study all the Israeli documents, they enabled the Hamas to cross. The Israeli army had virtually been withdrawn. The settlers were the weapons were taken away from the settlers, and the airbuses were virtually emptied, and the deliberate provocation of the music festival was shifted near the border. So all these are clear indications that Netanyahu had planned this event, and he wanted to use it just as he has been doing it to expand his war and sustain his government.
Okay.
So, in that way, the Israeli government is not free of its stained reputation, and they are sustaining this kind of a violent approach in order to keep their government. The internal situation, look at it. They have removed the Attorney General, they have removed the Shin Bet, they have removed the army chiefs, commanders, everybody, anybody who opposes war and Netanyahu is out of job. So in that way, the agenda of this government is very clear, and they don't want to hand over Gaza to the Palestinians. They are opposed to Palestinian Authority also, and they want to expel the Palestinians from Gaza, and slowly they are destroying the houses and everything of the Palestinians in West Bank also.
There's one more aspect here, Professor Pasha, since we are on the topic, on that issue right now. There seems to be a lack of credible leadership on the Palestinian side also. All the Hamas leadership is either accused of terror activities or they are in hiding. And as far as the political leadership in Palestine is concerned, they seem to lack the kind of charisma which the earlier leadership in 80s, 90s used to have with Yasser Arafat and others.
Yeah, you see, the Clinton tried to mediate like President Carter at the Camp David, and Yasser Arafat went there, and Ehud Barak went there, and America did not use its influence to persuade Israel to withdraw from the West Bank and Gaza. So in that way, you see, there was leadership, and after that, Mahmoud Abbas also was willing to go extra mile to achieve Palestinian state. But it was expected after the Oslo Accord 10-year process that they will have a Palestinian state. This is Israeli propaganda that there is no Palestinian leader to discuss. There were leaders, there are still leaders willing to discuss and compromise, but Israel wants both peace as well as territory. That is the real problem. They want to expel the Palestinians to Jordan because they treat Jordan as the eastern half of the Palestinian state. They want that to become Palestine so that they can get rid of the Palestinians in West Bank.
Okay. Let's take in the views from Ambassador Trigunayat here as well. Ambassador Trigunayat, as you heard Professor Pasha, would you agree with these stipulations as you were saying that, and then when we look at the larger situation also, going back a little back in the time, it was all building up in your first response, you're talking about how some of the Western allies of the United States have also, and also now on the forefront of agreeing to a two-state solution, recognizing the state of Palestine, like France, Australia, Canada as well. And the reason being that one, the scale of violence, two, the kind of actions which have been taken by Israel under the leadership of Netanyahu. Has Netanyahu gone too far this time around?
Well, I think that Netanyahu has this time been, I think, the most diplomatically isolated. And even domestically, there is a significant opposition to him. Even the Jewish lobby that controls the US foreign policy and that indirectly Israel does is not that happy with him. And likewise, even President Trump is unhappy because he thinks that he doesn't listen to him. In fact, if you remember that President Trump wanted the ceasefire before he took power at the second time, and it happened, but within just an eyewash. So within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it just broke because there was no sincere intent on the part of either the Hamas or, for that matter, the President, Prime Minister Netanyahu. Frankly, Hamas was maybe a sui generis organization, but it was very much sustained by the Israeli leadership, especially Netanyahu, all along, basically to divide the Palestinian movement. When you are talking about the leadership of Palestinians, you see, if it is their country, let them find a leader themselves. It's nobody else's business. And when there is Palestinian Authority, which the world recognizes, they're the ones to deal with, and Israel deals with Abbas. Today, Abbas has also said yesterday, I think, that there would be no totally disarmed people. Hamas will not be part of the ruling system. They have asked them to lay down the arms, release the hostages. So all that is there, provided there is a definitive desire on the part of the United States and Israel to create some kind of a two-state solution that should. Your initial question was whether two-state solution is possible. Yes, theoretically it is possible, but today Israel controls nearly 78% of the territory from the original 55%. What will happen to that? Do you think they'll go back from the settlements that they have created? It's an armed settlement. So the violence in West Bank is through the settlers. What will they do about it? What about the Gazans? I mean, when you use extreme force against a people, they do rise against you. India has been dealing with terrorism the last 4 decades, but we have not gone after a whole population or civilian population to do that. So what you are doing essentially is to, under the garb of maintaining your own security, you are creating future challenges for yourself. So I think there is something wrong with that strategy, which is governed by this fear psychosis and an utter security and some kind of an arrogance of power. So I think that, and the United States is definitely complicit in those things. If US wanted it, it could have happened yesterday. But we hope that you see, both the Israeli and the Palestinian people should be able to live in peace. We all hope that there is no violence or terrorism at all, because which we condemn completely as far as India is concerned. But at the same time, the Israelis will also, the people have to see that eventually at the end of the day, whether it's a one-state solution, two-state, three-state, whatever solution is there, they will have to deal with the demands of the Palestinians as well, which are genuine demands.
Okay, indeed, both our neighbors, the Israelis and Palestinians, they will have to live with each other, learn to live with each other peacefully, exist peacefully as well, and of course, figure the way out. As far as the world leaders are concerned, the other stakeholders are concerned, as both our experts, Mr. Trigunayat and Professor Pasha, are pointing out, they seem to be having their own specific reasons in either switching their stand or staying with whatever their stand has been for the past 40, 50, 60 odd years is. But everybody, it looks like right now, is pushing for peace in the region and dialogue there as well, including India, of course, which has time and again said that the only solution lies in a peaceful dialogue, sitting across the table, trying to figure out as to which way we can move forward. We will keep a close watch on the developments in this particular region and, of course, on the question of the two-state solution. And we'll come back again next week with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Dialogus and Worldview. Stay tuned. Thank you.